Well, I talk about hunting the weather all the time. I have a whitetail book coming out, all weather whitetails, and I've been writing about hunting the weather and using the ingredients for the weather, whether it would be wind or temperature change, extreme weather, and really looking at the forecast and saying, you know, in a few days it's going to be great hunting because of this. And I found, you know, you can look at the moon. There's lots of different charts and tables and calendars that you can look at to predict your success. But what's worked for me for 25 years is really looking at the weather and saying, you know, this provides me a base of hunting opportunity. Now, nothing's ever perfect, nothing's ever guaranteed. But what I found is by hunting the weather and using the weather forecast, that's been the most reliable hunting indicator, and in the various deer fronts that are coming through to predict my level of success with the weather. The cool thing is, you know, when I was looking at this back in the late 80s, early 90s, the best weather I had was Oakland Press down in Oakland County, Lower Michigan, looking at that and saying, what's the weather going to be? And trying to predict, well, what's that going to be an hour and a half up north or hour and 45 minutes up in the Thumb area. When I was in the Thumb area, late 80s, early 90s, they had the marine weather forecast out of Saginaw Bay for that up in the area, up in Lake Huron. And it was to a point where you really didn't have a long range forecast out. You're good for a day or two at the most. In fact, there were several times where I actually left my home, went to hunt in the morning, and all of a sudden I finally get the marine weather forecast, and it's the wrong wind. So I actually literally would turn around. There's a certain stand I wanted to hunt. I'd turn around and go back home that morning. And so here I was all ready to go, all ready to sit, and I'm not going to go to a stand, and I've been very religious about that since the late 80s, early 90s, that I'm not going to go to a stand if the wind's poor and the wind's bad. And so, you know, back then, again, it was a day or two out. In the 2000s with AccuWeather, weather.com, you start getting into a situation where you could predict 4 to 5 days out. You could say, hey, there's a major front coming, there's a major system coming, and it was probable that it would come through. And now, though, what's great about the weather and weather forecasts is if you don't see a major front coming till 4 to 5 days out, then, you know, all due respect, you probably haven't been paying attention to the forecast, because what's great about now is you can see these major fronts coming within about a week to 14 days, 10 days out. You can see those major temperature changes. So if we're at a big, high, steady, high temperature range, and then it's dropping, and that's in the forecast 10 days from now, those are major weather influences. Those are jet streams. Those are weather influences that cover the entire country. They're not just for your city, for your county, for your state, for even your region. It's for the country. So when these major jet streams are moving through, they're signifying major changes in the country, and they're very dependable. Now, it might be that temperature range, you're predicting a 12-degree drop, it ends up 18, or it ends up 6. But bottom line, there's going to be a drop, and it's coming, and you can see it a long ways out. I find that the wind directions with that drop are pretty accurate. Obviously, in the Midwest, when you get winds coming through and there's a temperature change and it's dropping, you're going to have northwest winds just about every single time. And you can see that now. Wind speed could be very variable. Who knows? They could forecast 7-8 inches of snow, or a foot of snow, or heavy snow, and who knows if there's even going to be precipitation, or maybe it's even going to be rain. Maybe the temperature is going to be a little bit warmer. Bottom line is, though, is that those major temperature changes, either plus or minus, are very dependable, very reliable, and I found even out to 10 to 14 days out where you see major drops. You can start planning for them. Once you get into that week range, where you can say this drop is about a week out and you've been seeing it coming, very reliable then, probably within 12, 24 hours of when it's actually forecasted. When you're 4 or 5 days out, it's 100%. It's coming. It's going to be within 6 to 12 hours at the worst, and there's going to be a temperature change you can depend on. You can let your boss know, your spouse know, your family know, your friends know, your buddies know this is coming, we're going hunting now. Again, 4 to 5 days out, you should have seen this coming a week to 10 days out. And I encourage you to look at the forecast, really look long range, see those weather changes coming, and learn how it affects your hunt. I hunt on the cold backside of the fronts. Beginning of the front, especially in snowstorm blizzards, great deer out feeding. But I love the colder, calm, rising barometric pressures of the backside of the front, and they will not steer you wrong. We have the rut coming up here in about 10 days. The pre-rut starts, and you can bet I'm already looking at the weather in AccuWeather, Weather Underground, and trying to figure out exactly where those fronts are and how it's going to affect my sits, my set rotations from different properties. And I watch the weather all hunting season long. Fortunately now we don't have to listen to marine weather radio or look at the Oakland Press or newspaper and see what the weather's going to be. We can go right on our smartphones and get an accurate weather forecast, sometimes 7 to 14 days out. I encourage you to look at it, study it, and enjoy it because it's the most reliable form of hunt prediction that I've found in the last 25 to 30 years.